The speakers arrived late, and after a few preliminaries, the chair of psychiatry introduced them to enthusiastic applause. Though they were brothers, they could hardly have looked any less alike. Miles Palmer was tall and athletic, handsome in a distinguished gray-haired way, his every movement projecting solidity and authority. Peter Bartoli looked like a character from a fairy tale, almost gnome-like in appearance, with exaggerated features and dark, deep-set eyes that never seemed to look in one direction for more than a fleeting moment. By the time they spoke at my medical school, the Palmer Institute was famous, but psychiatry itself had become schizophrenic, hopelessly at war with itself over the question of whether traditional approaches to therapy could hold their place in a world dominated by drugs and biological models of behavior. "There's been a revolution in the past 20 years, Miles Palmer declared, towering over the podium authoritatively. A revolution in our understanding of the brain and what used to be called mental illness."
"And like most revolutions,"
Bartoli interrupted, crouching behind his lectern to peer impishly up at Palmer,
"this one has left its fair share of mangled victims in the streets."
He flashed a wide grin at the audience.
"I'm only his half-brother,"
he said, "in case you were wondering why I'm so short." We all laughed, nervously, uncomfortably. None of us was prepared for Bartoli's strange appearance, or the irreverent tone he seemed to be setting.
"You talk about the brain,"
he went on, turning again to face his brother.
"But what I'd like to know is, whatever happened to the mind? Isn't that what we ought to be concerned about?"
"What you call the mind," Dr. Palmer scoffed, "is merely the brain as seen from the inside out."
"And what you call the brain is merely the physical mechanism the mind has evolved to perpetuate itself."
More nervous laughter from the groundlings, myself included. Could this impudent creature be the famous Peter Bartoli? We asked ourselves. What was he trying to prove? Crouched behind his lectern, he gave us his answer in a hoarse aside.
"I'm here to play the id to my brother's superego."
Palmer cut off the laughter with a dismissive wave of his hand. "If there were such a thing as an id," he told the audience, "I could think of no one better qualified to play it than my brother." They continued in this vein for nearly an hour, and it was the most exciting hour of my medical education. Of course it was all an act, a dramatization of the struggle tearing at the heart of psychiatry, or so I assumed at the time. Not until later, when I'd finished my residency and signed on for a full-time job at the Palmer Institute, did I realize that the hostility I'd witnessed between the brothers was not only real, but of mythic proportions.
"The mind, unlike the brain, is infinite,"
Bartoli had shouted in an impassioned moment toward the end of the debate. And after the presentation had ended, he leapt back on stage and had the last word.
"I leave you with a challenge," he told the medical students. "No matter where your career takes you, remember that the human psyche must be viewed with the naked eye, not through a telescope from light years away, nor through a microscope that can focus only on synapses and neuroreceptors. You have to look at it from a human distance, the distance between one person and another. And that's the hardest part of this profession. To enter it, you must be a scientist. But to succeed, you must be a human being."